Howdy, Patrick. I don't know if you can see me. I hope you can. We got about 4 minutes before I actually start. Hope everything's going good for you, man. Thank you for joining me today. All right, well, it's close enough to 3 o'clock, and I really appreciate everybody being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on our journey through dealing with conflict. This is our very first Facebook Live episode that we're going to be doing over this particular topic. It won't be our last, I promise. I actually have a series of 6 videos or 6 live sessions that we're going to be doing throughout these next few months. And I would really want to start first by introducing myself. I am Eric Navinger. I am a leadership coach rooted in Christ that helps people deal with the stress that comes from conflict in their businesses, at their homes, in their communities even, for that matter. But before we go there, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever noticed that when somebody says, "I'm fine," they actually mean, "Prepare for war," right? Well, the reality is that everything we do in life has conflict, whether it's good conflict or bad conflict. It doesn't really matter. We talk about work, we talk about business, we talk about family, community. There's always something, even to the point of in our heads. When we talk about conflict, it is everywhere. As a matter of fact, conflict has been a part of history since the beginning of time, right? Thank you, Adam and Eve. But that's less the point, right? So how do we deal with that conflict? How do we deal with the things that are causing us frustration and annoyance and everything like that? But, well, the first thing I need you to understand is that it's not a matter of when we will face the conflict, but it's a matter of how we respond to that conflict? How do we react to bad things happening? So let me give you a quick understanding or a quick story for myself of how not to deal with conflict. So 2016, I am in the military. This is about we're getting close to year 17, 18 in the military by that point. And I was a leader of a very large unit, and we had 250 plus personnel underneath us. And I was with my second in command, we called him my first sergeant. And we were in the far reaches of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, executing an operational training exercise that was supposed to validate our ability to lead our unit. Well, we both have the responsibility of moving our unit from one place to wherever we were, right? Executing our mission wherever we are inside Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We've done this a dozen times or more. Never had a problem. But for some reason, this day was a very different day. We had a very different attitude towards each other at that point. We both had a different idea of what we should be doing, how we should be moving our people, setting things up. And because of that, it created a very tense situation where we both started just yelling at each other. We both basically came unglued on each other. We didn't go to fists or anything like that, but we did not handle that conflict well at all. So my first sergeant, my second in command, goes to avoidance mode. He does not want to deal with this at all. But me, being the leader, feeling like I need to assert my authority in the situation, I'm chasing after it and I'm telling him exactly what it needs to be and how it needs to go. And I'm just completely directing instead of listening to what he had to say and his opinion and how he thought it needed to go, right? But because of that, while I may have gotten my way, I created a very big rift between me and my second in command. And it permeated throughout our unit, and permeated throughout that training event. And it wasn't until cooler heads prevailed that we finally were able to deal with the situation that we had just gone through. We both did not listen to each other. We both had very real problems with what we were doing, even though we both had the same intent to be able to get our unit where it needed to be and do exactly what we needed to be doing, validating our leadership capabilities. So through this situation that we dealt with, I learned a lot of lessons. It became the catalyst on why I actually have spent so much time on conflict management. I realized that even though at that point I was in my 30s, I didn't know anything about dealing with conflict. I didn't have the experience that I needed to be able to tell what I was doing, that I was creating this division. And because of that, I decided I needed to learn from my own mistakes and also the mistakes of others who were creating the same kinds of situations. Thankfully enough, because of that education, I was able to use it in my last unit, my last position in the Army, where I actually did teach conflict management on the regular to leaders so that they did not create the same problems or have the same problems that I did while I was out there doing my job. So, what did this situation give me? Well, my learning from the situation helped me create what I call the ABCs of conflict management, okay? And we'll get into those here in a minute, but first I really want to talk about what does society say about conflict. There's a lot of things out there that say, that talk about conflict. They talk about how to manage it and resolve it. But most of it actually goes to utter and complete avoidance of that conflict, of the situation that you're dealing with, whether it be a person, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. Total and utter avoidance. What does that mean? Well, that means we got to keep the peace. That means it's not worth the time or the pain that's going to cause for you to deal with that, right? It's don't rock the boat, right? If I'm rocking the boat, I'm making things harder on myself. At least that's what the society wants us to believe when it comes to conflict. But the reality is that avoidance is not creating peace. Avoidance actually buries the problems so that later on, when everything comes to a head, it explodes and destroys you and everybody around you, or everybody in the situation. But when we handle conflict in the right way, where we may be avoiding for half a second to be able to cool our heads, but we're dealing with it in a very constructive manner, we can get through the conflict in the situation and be a winner, be a hero on the other side, even for that matter. So, when we're dealing with tension in our family, we're dealing with our work problems, we're dealing with business issues, or even our own personal doubts, if we're looking at the situation with a perception that is negative, a perception that doesn't allow us to work through it, and instead we avoid it, then we are doing nothing but creating more problems for ourselves. And that leads me into the ABCs of conflict management. But before we get in there, I got one question, and I want you to ask it to yourself, answer it honestly, okay? If you want to put it in the comments, great. We can talk about that another time if you'd like. But real quick, this is a self-check for you. When conflict shows up, what's your first reaction? Is it to avoid it and hope it passes by? Is it to argue until you get heard, which is what I did in my situation? Is it to freeze up and shut down? Or do you lean in and seek clarity in that situation? Now, keep in mind, your answer here reveals your current mindset towards conflict. But trust me when I tell you, it doesn't have to remain this way. It can change. Your mindset can change towards conflict. And it's very important that it does. Because the first thing that we have to talk about when we're talking about conflict is the awareness begins inside. It begins in us, right? Our own personal awareness of how we deal with conflict, our own personal awareness of our own feelings, right? Feelings is a very overused word sometimes, but they still play a part in our reactions to certain conflicts. So if we're looking at things in a negative manner, we're going to be much more reactionary towards that conflict, right? Towards that situation. So you have a coworker that you have a real problem with, and you two are really going at it. And you're looking at that coworker as in a negative manner, you're looking at them with what's called a threat mindset. Now, the threat mindset is a mindset that is not only defensive, but also very hard toned. And there's no understanding being sought when we have a threat mindset, okay? When we're looking at this person in a more positive way, we're giving them grace, and we are trying to seek to understand their situation. We're being more opportunistic. We're exercising what's called an opportunity mindset. Now, opportunity mindset brings about growth. An opportunity mindset brings about understanding and clarity, right? We're respectful. We are purposeful about how we're dealing with that particular person or that situation. And so what we find ourselves in society's mind, we should be looking to avoid because it's a negative thing. That conflict is a negative thing, right? Bad conflict is negative. Good conflict is negative. I just bought a brand new house. I have $1 million bills now. Well, if anybody owns a house, they understand You are responsible for everything. Well, that's a good thing. It gives you responsibility, but at the same time, it's extremely hard to deal with sometimes. We get scared, we fear that we are going to fail, and so we freeze. We avoid it because that's what society wants us to do, is avoid, right? Well, with these mindsets, with this opportunity mindset, we don't look at the situation or the person as an enemy. I had a discussion with a gentleman last week that was dealing with a situation with a girlfriend who had been cheating on him. He was planning on ending it with her, and he was asking me, what do I do? How do I make sure that I am an honorable man out of this whole situation? She wronged me. I should be mad. And he was exactly right. It's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to really kind of like, oh, I can't believe this, right? But what he was going into that situation with was a threat mindset where this girl was going to be the enemy, and he was going to go out guns a-blazing. He was going to tell her off. He was going to tell her exactly what he thought of her. So what I cautioned him on was, because he knew where he was going, look at that situation, look at her as somebody he once cared about, right? And why did he care about her? And take that mindset into that situation and end it, if that is what happens. It's okay. And so 24 hours later, he calls me. He's like, okay, I did it. It ended. And thankfully enough, it ended in a way that, at the very least, they weren't going to kill each other. And I'm glad for that. So when we look at these mindsets and we look at an opportunity mindset, we're seeking to grow. We're seeking to honor the other person, as well as have integrity for ourselves. And that takes me into his situation takes me into the next thing: bold engagement over avoidance. I already talked about what avoidance can do, but when we engage boldly, we are respectful and purposeful, and actually seek to strengthen the relationships that we are dealing with in that situation, in that conflict. Strengthening relationships actually will be a plus on the other side when we are respectful. But if we are avoiding, then we're just creating fear. We're unresolved. We have unresolved tension, and we lose trust. They lose trust in us, and we lose trust in them. And in that way, we create more problems for ourselves and ultimately destroy what could have been a very good situation. So from that, let's move into the last thing, and it's basically that conflict cultivates our character. And I hinted at this in the last thing. The B there is that we have to be honorable. Well, when we're dealing with conflict and we deal with it in a healthy way, it actually is an opportunity, as we talked about, to grow. Instead of destroying and mishandling the situation, we can respond in a kind way, in a way that is necessary to build up and sharpen ourselves and the other person. Proverbs 27:17 says that as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of a friend. So when we are in conflict with each other and we deal with each other in a fair way, in a respectful and purposeful way, we are actually sharpening each other instead of cutting through and destroying each other. Now, that's hard to hear sometimes, but in the long run, it creates a better relationship with that other person, and everybody gets to win. That's what conflict is all about. Coming up with some kind of win-win situation. But it doesn't happen when we're going in with knife hands, directly attacking the other person or the thing, or we're avoiding the situation altogether. So, practical tip here, ready? When you find yourself in a conflict, the next time you find yourself in a conflict, stop for a second. Before you react, ask yourself, Are you seeing this person as a threat? Or are you seeing this situation as a threat? Or are you seeing it as an opportunity? And hopefully you're seeing it as an opportunity to grow and become better, like I did out of my situation while I was a commander in the military. But if you're seeing it as a threat, stop. Do exactly what I asked that gentleman to do. And I'm not going to name his name, but do exactly what I asked him to do. Look at the situation from the other person's point of view. Look at why do you appreciate that person, right? Or why do you appreciate that situation? And I know sometimes this is hard to do because maybe you really didn't appreciate them very much. But what good have they done for the organization, for yourself, for other people around you that you care about, right? And look at them in that way versus they are the enemy. They deserve to be destroyed overall, right? So with that being said, I would like to leave you with a few things to do, okay? I don't want you to just sit here and listen to my ABCs of conflict management and do nothing with it. I want you to be able to apply it immediately. And so how do we do that? Well, first of all, I want you to take whatever current conflict you're dealing with, and I want you to think about that conflict or the tension in your life, whatever it may be, right? And then I want you to write down what it is first, and then what your perception of that situation is. Is it a threat? Is it annoying? Is it burdensome? Or is it an opportunity? Hopefully it's an opportunity, but if it's not, go to God. And even if it is an opportunity, go to God and ask Him to reveal and reframe that situation in your mind. Let Him help you see the reality of that conflict, whether it's good or bad, and where you can learn from it and how you can engage healthily in that situation. And finally, the last thing I need you to do is take one small action. Maybe that action looks like going to the person and asking for forgiveness because of something you did. Maybe that action looks like taking the step forward into the new amazing opportunity that you just got in your job or in your business. And actually looking at it as an opportunity to grow. So even a small change in your perception can completely change how you show up to a conflict, to a situation like this. And I thank everybody for coming today. It has been a great time, and I hope everybody has gotten something out of it. I want to leave you with kind of final notes here. Conflict handled right equals growth, trust, and a strong leadership at work and at home. When we handle conflict correctly, we win. Everybody wins on all sides, but most of all, you win. How you see the conflict determines how you respond to it, okay? If you respond in a negative way, it's going to go bad. But if you respond in a good, positive way, where you're giving grace, you're being respectful, and you're being purposeful about your response, again, you win. And who doesn't want to win, right? So finally, if you got something out of this, I ask that you comment. I ask that you share the link, share this video, this session with your friends, spread it out. It is so important that we get this message out. And the only way we can get it out is if we're engaging during it. I thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to our next session. It'll be next week. All right. Step into conflict with courage, clarity, and a mindset ready to grow. And then we can recognize the conflict before it erupts. That's our next session. It'll be we'll do it next week, probably around this same time. And I hope to see everybody who is here today then. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day. Thank you very much.